how do you personally stay up to date with current fashions?
So before the Instagram, it used to be we waited for magazines, we waited for professional forecasting services. There were huge companies that did, predicted forecasts for design globally, not only fashion design, but interior design and architecture and product design. So these giants are still around today. WGSN, WWD, Women's Wear Daily was a huge resource for all of us. And Trend Union was a huge corporation. And once Instagram swept across the globe, now I think this is my to-go-to source. I mean, all of my favorite brands. Now you can take a peek inside all the atelier of Alexander McQueen, Schiaparelli, anybody, just look at their stories and you'll see what they're working on, and you'll see what they're thinking, because they're so much ahead of the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Zula, do you have anything to add to that? How do you personally stay up to date with current fashions?
Oh, this is a perfect answer. Yes, it was when before the Vogue was your Bible, and you just wait for the magazine and just like, you receive it first.
Issue.
now it's the yes, you just signed, you follow the ones that are speaking to you, and they become your friends almost. You have that feeling because you know what they're doing every day on Instagram. Plus there are companies that are showing the underground fashion, the one that is not under the fashion rather. I mean, they're just like great people, but they're doing such a narrow niche of design, not the mainstream, something that is more maybe avant-garde, and they are even more interesting because if you probably noticed that fashion stopped being dictator long ago, and now there is not necessary to follow trend. Whatever yummy trend that is, you can just create your own and go with your own game.
Yes, yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think when I've certainly covered the latest trends from season to season, it's anything goes, really anything goes.
Yeah.
They have so many different sections now, and there's always the retro section. It's like, really, again? Where do you find your inspiration to produce your collection, Zula?
Well, I am often asked that question, and I never know what to say. It's everybody's brain is very unique, and mind, and whatever bothers you. I would compare that with the birth of the child. Like you are conceiving something. Something that bothering you, something that doesn't let you sleep at night. It's just comes and goes, and then you just understand that you have to carry that into the birth. Because all of my collections, I think of them as children of a sort, but inspiration. There is usually a few things that are on your mind. It can be that Japan collection that is my latest, and the teaser that you saw. It was on my mind for probably maybe like 10 years. I just didn't ever. It was other things on the way, but when I finally got to that, it was immense pleasure.
Wonderful. And Alissa, where do you find your inspiration? Is it a similar sort of experience for you, or do you perhaps read a book or see a movie or something? And
I completely relate to what Zula has said. I think it's that feeling of birthing something is very familiar to all designers, not just fashion designers. But I just wanted to add that my huge source of inspirations has always been museums. And I feel like Jacksonville has many wonderful museums and many great galleries. So there's anything from decorative art to modern art, just to be inspired by colors, by other artistic expression. And my another huge inspiration source is travel. So it's kind of a coincidence how we both have this Japan theme running through.
Yes.
And my came from my trip to Japan in 2018, and I was blown away, of course, by the history and the tradition and just the visual richness of their aesthetic. And what I loved is their textiles. It's from vintage textiles to new artisan textiles, how deep that tradition is, the connection between the artisan and the product. And I brought a bunch of things with me. Of course, I had to indulge. I got a suitcase full of vintage kimonos, vintage just scraps of fabrics. And 2 years later, and I honestly didn't know what to do with them. And then 2 years later came this line when I put, the two and two together.
Yes, of course. Of course.
See, I would love then to add that the difference between me and Alissa, I guess, is that I almost never inspired by some final product. Would it be art, or would it be color combinations? What really inspires me is some idea, like very vague idea that is like would remind you like a smoke or clouds, the undefined, and then to make that idea physical. Say, for example, that last collection, I would love to travel to Japan. Oh my God, it's my dream. But since I couldn't, it was my how I think of Japan, of Japanese culture. An idea came that Japan have so many faces. There's so many iconic cultural substances like samurai, geisha, sakura. I mean, name it. There is a kimono. There is so many. They belong to the world. So the inspiration for this collection came from the idea of change of the mood of the woman, that she can go from the mood of samurai to geisha in the blink of eye. That's how we're built. And different moods were represented by different cultural icons of Japanese culture. And so that was moving me, like the change, how you can show different sides of the culture through the moods of the woman, how it changes throughout the day or hour, or sometimes a minute. We all know that. So that it was a little bit different, but I don't know what would inspire me if I would travel to Japan. God knows, I cannot predict.
So much, I'm sure. I mean, we've slightly touched on this next question before, but perhaps there may be something specific that you can add to it. What training and education do you personally recommend for somebody who is wanting to go further and specifically study fashion design?
Well, my education came from Russia, from maybe too many years ago. And back then we were trained in everything from sketching through building, well, they call it pattern making. There it was industrial construction of the garments, and of course technology of how it's to make it. And basically they touched every aspect of from personal custom made clothes to and through industrial production of the clothes. So we were taught how to create the factory and how to make sure that would be not hazardous for people, and the economic economic part of it, and we did not touch marketing because we're talking about different era in different country. So that would be something new to me. And then, of course, they were teaching us how to actually make things. Still, right after that, we were like really green. Experience. This is the occupation that requires experience. It's a hands-on thing. No matter how well they will be teaching you how to make food or cut hair, you would still have to learn how to do it with your hands to become good. Theory is not enough. But I recommend theory because they were teaching us the history of fashion and how to create the collection that would be cohesive and what materials to use. So basically, when I am designing, when I'm sketching, I'm already projecting all kind of layers of necessary information into that. I'm doing that automatically because I was trained like that. But
right.
If you are not experienced in actually making that, working with the client, yes, we were studying anthropology, human body, but to know the real human body, you have to work with that. So I would recommend first going to school thoroughly. And of course, nowadays, as Alissa said, that school is much more, it's a wide range of knowledge that you have to be fluent in. And then I would recommend to work in atelier. And then depends if you want to go with big giants and work with ready-to-wear, it's wonderful. It's a very different branch. It's interesting. It's interesting to predict something that would be very profitable and popular. But if you want to go for more like boutique kind of niche, custom design or creating collections that are unique, and then you're going to need years of experience. It's a journey. It's not a stop in life. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm still learning things. And it's a wonderful feeling.
Alissa, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, specialized school is definitely a starting point. If you choose full bachelor's, or if it's your secondary education, at least an associate degree, but you need that time. You need that time to start with your technical skills. You need to understand, even if you won't choose to work for a atelier or a smaller designer with more hands-on, you still need that thorough understanding of how garments are constructed. And of course, I graduated Parsons, so I will always be the cheerleader of that school because it gives you a very wholesome education, not only in the major that you choose, but you start with 2D art, digital art, just getting your eye trained in aesthetics and learning to express yourself through any visual media. And then you step into your major and you hone in on the specific skills that you will need later. And I mean, I have worked with people from that came from many other wonderful schools, and we have a lot of schools in this country. I mean, SCAD is in Savannah. It's very close. Kent State is in Midwest in Ohio, which is excellent school. You have FIT in New York. You have a number of other schools. So there are a lot of choices. There's definitely a lot of choices to get your degree.
Yes.
And that's the first step. And then you get training. Then you choose your path. Do you apprentice with someone like Zula and get that more hands-on conceptual training? Or do you start with a giant and then it's more about merchandising, retailing, and balancing act between creativity and profitability?
Yes. Both of you actually stated there that once you've got your grounding with a solid, perhaps college education, you then need to start about thinking about experience and going to work with other people. So many people I know have said, well, I've done my training now. Now I'm going to become a fashion designer. But actually, there's a lot to be said, and I think both of you said, you know, you need the experience of working and finding out what it's like in real life. So thank you for those answers. Alissa, what do you think the future trends in fashion are?
Well, I mean, I feel like as far as visual direction, I feel nowadays anything goes, really. Like you have the maximalism of hypebeast and streetwear, and then you have minimalism of the row, and everything in between. Every decade has been referenced and recycled faster and faster. It's not even the year that we're in, but the month that we're in. But I think there will be, and that's in my opinion, there'll be two big movements. One movement that people after transformation of fashion scene by fast fashion, by Zara and H&M, people will start craving more one of a kind and artisan and unique and keepsake pieces. So those limited collections, micro designers, local designers, things that will have that personal connection and a story behind them that people love. People love to experience storytelling that designers will bring. And I think, and opposite of that, very hands-on, very personal, you have emergence of virtual reality and digital fashion and things that will only exist in virtual space.
Yes.
And you already have all these gaming attributes that people are paying a lot of, real money for. And as more and more people will spend time in those virtual spaces, it will be natural to them to accessorize. And it's interesting because before, computers just didn't have capabilities, like you couldn't customize things. And the more and more we progress technologically, the more options we have. So I think that will be a next big direction as well for designers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Zula, let's talk a little bit about how you start to create. Do you prefer to start with sketching, or do you prefer to jump right in with your idea and drape?
Well, that's my way of thinking, with the pencil or the pen and the piece of paper. Mostly because I was trained as I sketch. As I said, I'm already thinking of a pattern, and I'm already thinking of the technology, of details, and what fabric I'm going to use. So yeah, sketching is number one to me. But the idea that comes to mind, it's the first step. Sometimes if you see me looking very strange somewhere, like staring into the wall and looking maybe not the most intelligent, expression of my face, that probably some idea came to my mind. And sometimes I really have to, like, really fast sketch it down, or even write it down or something, because it's going to be gone.
So you actually walk around with a notebook or a sketchbook, so that you're always able.
It's always handy. It's always handy. Ideas, it's like if somebody like ever wrote poetry, it comes to you once you write it down, because it's very whimsical. It's not something like, oh, right, and it's going to be like that. No, to me, at least, sketching is the language of the designer, because ideally the designer and then the pattern maker and then technologist, it's three different people.
Sure.
If you say I have like big company designer is just sketching, in order for the next person in line to understand your idea, you have to be fluent, you have to be understanding, you have to sketch it the way they would understand what you meant. So sketching is important.
Okay. And Alissa, who is your client, do you think, for your current collections?
I think for the current collection, and of course, I come from mass market, so that client is very different than from what I'm working on now. So my current client is the one that I addressed before, the one who is seeking that artisan, one of a kind, like that one piece will be mine and mine only. And that piece has a story behind it. Like the textile in that piece has a story behind it. So it's not a demographic, it could be anybody, but it's that it's the appreciation for just issue of one. Yeah.
Do your pieces actually come with a written story, or do you just tell the client?
Actually, that's a great idea. That's actually a great idea. Maybe because each single piece of textile that I use for the denim has a little story to it. So maybe I'll
attach.
I'll attach like a little love note. Yeah.
How fabulous! How fabulous! And do you take into consideration the environmental effects of your creations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, right now I'm totally on a different side of spectrum from mass market or fast fashion. But even working in a larger company, there's always, at least from design department, there's always that drive to go to the recycled materials, reduce the waste as much as you can. There's many initiatives now that weren't in place even 5 years ago. And it's nice to see that industry is embracing that on all scales.
Yeah. Well, now I'm going to start with you, Zula, because we've got some very special questions that have been submitted from students from the Bartram Trail High School Fashion Design Academy. And that's really exciting because they are desperate to find out more information from you. And the first one, which is actually, it's quite interesting. And I think I'll slightly rephrase it, but how come you're a fashion designer residing in Jacksonville, Zula?
I can even hear the tone of the voice. I've been asked that question many times before. Well, it's not really fashion related. We moved here from Denver, Colorado when I had 2 little kids. It was ocean here and constant summer, and for people from Russia, constantly being in a warm state, it felt like permanent vacation. So that's how it never stopped me from traveling. I was traveling to New York, DC, Miami, wherever, at that point, the fashion weeks that were going on. And starting from my last New York Fashion Week in 2017, I decided that I don't have to limit myself anymore because the world became just my playground. I can do that from where I am. And the last collection, which I produced in the COVID year, to myself, the greatest so far. Well, you always love the youngest child more. So we did the whole production, and I never was so thorough with the production, with the shooting the teaser, shooting the collection, doing all at once, and all in the comfort of my house. It was absolutely fabulous. I loved it.
So that's going to be a permanent thing now, perhaps. Now you know how wonderful it is to do.
I have so many ideas now. You're not gonna believe it. I mean, there is like so many. If your mind is creative, I think limitations, they are actually igniting your mind for possibilities, and that's what's been going on. Yes, I'm very excited about the choices that are in front of me.
Yeah. Alissa, the second question from the students is, first of all, is there fashion in Jacksonville? So this is a two-part question, really. Is there fashion in Jacksonville? And if so, what jobs are there if you want to be a designer or a merchandiser?
So I think you ladies probably know much better, because I am a relative newcomer to Jacksonville, and I came a year ago, right when pandemic started. So I'm just starting to venture back out and exploring more. But I think, and what attracted me in the first place, Jacksonville is a huge cultural hub. I don't think a lot of people out, like maybe up north or outside the rest of the country, know just how much resources are here, creative resources, as far as artists, and just talking about creative sphere altogether, like music and art and design as well. So it looks to me there's a lot of boutiques, very creative boutiques that I've discovered. There's very cool small swimwear and surfwear companies, very creative, extremely creative. I mean, Zula is couture atelier. Yeah, so you definitely have places like that you can discover. As far as giants go, I think I only know of Steinmart. I don't think there's a design department there, but there's definitely merchandising and retailing part of that.
Actually, I think Steinmart is no more.
Oh, really?
I believe they closed mid last year, but they did have their own design department. They had their own brand that they used to put out, as well as others. But yeah, sadly,
yeah,
I believe that they're.
I had no idea. I thought that they only closed stores as many retailers last year, but
there are.
I'm definitely not an expert then.
That's all right. That's all right. There are a few places in Jacksonville, more now than there used to be, and as you quite rightly said, it's becoming more and more of a cultural city full of artists and artisans. So we watch this space, because I think this is definitely a place to be if you're an artist or a creative.
I mean, just personally, Jacksonville reminds me of Brooklyn. The way good notion of Brooklyn, the way it used to be, because it used to be affordable. So that's perfect place for creative types. When it's a city, it's a big urban diverse hub, but it's still affordable. So you could make a living by being creative and experimenting and diving into your things. Yeah.
Now, one of the questions that the students put was, Zula, I was going to ask you, but actually you've pretty much answered this question, which was, how many designs do you sketch before you decide which you will create?
It's usually an album. The album that is you just like finish that page after page, and then you put some thoughts, and sometimes you have to scribble some notes because you don't have time to sketch. You just like do something and it's just like, yeah, that's organza and this is like the vertical seam or some, notes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I cannot even untangle that. I'm like, what did I mean? So yeah, it's a lot of sketching. It's not necessarily the sketch that you can present to the magazine. It's not like refined, because there are people who just do sketches. They're artists. They may not even be able to cut or sew or even sew on the button, but they can sketch. They if you know the history of fashion, they're like, if Saint Laurent couldn't do anything but sketch. And then if you know history of fashion, Gianni Versace couldn't sketch, or he could sew because he grew at the knee of his mother and auntie who were working at the atelier. There are different ways to come to where you want to be. And geography never matters. You can live in Jacksonville. I was invited to, a couple of weeks ago, I was invited to a party. It was a cabaret, not cabaret, burlesque masquerade party. And she called everybody to just step up the game and do whatever. You can do the party, you can just do some gatherings. If you're creative, you can wear whatever you want. You can have fun. It's not, when you're young, you just want to go to New York or Miami, and you can, but it's not, it doesn't mean that you cannot have fashion just where you are.
Yes.
And wherever you want, whenever.
And the final question, really, Rick, because the time has gone, and I'd like to get to the question and answer section, but the final question is, where do you buy your fabric and your materials?
Internet is such a huge ocean. The thing is that when I am designing, I already know what kind of fabric I want. And by description on the internet of the content and like all other characteristics of the fabric, I can predict what it's going to be. So I have my sources for silks or cottons, or sometimes it's contemporary fabrics, knittings, and whatever I dreamed on, you know. I would recommend Moods fabric for some, but really it's not even, you just have to know what you're looking for, and that's where education kicks in. You have to know what fabric you're looking for, and then you just type it in and just see where it's the optimal price and width and delivery. That's how I would say.
And Alissa, the same question to you. Where do you buy your fabrics and materials?
For the current line, of course, I buy thrift shops. I buy off of vintage dealers that all over the country. And for fabrics, you know, some of them came from my travels, since they are truly vintage fabrics. Some of them came from vintage textile showroom back in New York. So the sources are everywhere. But I mean, honestly, internet is an awesome resource we have right now. Even if you want to buy similar things, you can go on Etsy, you can go on Mood Fabrics, you can just Google it. Yeah.
Do both of you buy in the US, or do you go through perhaps for some of the Italian fabrics, or?
Some of my fabrics come straight from Japan, and then you just have to sit and wait for Japan to post for 3 weeks. But some of it, of course, this is all American Levi's vintage denim, so it comes from here. And
there are fabrics that only available at certain countries.
Yep.
And so you just have to source them, and you know, whenever people come to me with the custom design request, and they have like a few months, and I always warn them that half of the time is going to be sourcing of the fabric, unless we're lucky and we just find it. And usually it's very true. It's hard to find what you're looking for. But yes, Italian fabrics are fabulous, but you can buy them in US. You can. You can buy anything anywhere.
Ladies, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the students of Bartram Trail for those questions, because those were really very good questions. But I would like to now hand it back to Dana, who I know is going to throw open the floor for people to ask questions.
Yes, yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type into the chat. So far, we haven't any.
So how feeling your skin from within, and talk to your eczema specialist about toothpaste.
There you go. I don't think that was a question. But oh, I also wanted to mention, just for the students, just so you know, when you were asking about Jacksonville, that we do have Venus swimwear here in Jacksonville. And a few years ago, we offered a tour of the factory, and it was really interesting to see the design department and everything. And so we are hoping to maybe have another tour of Venus swimwear later this year. So that's really interesting. I went a few years ago, and I was just amazed by the size of it, of the whole process. So, all right. Does anyone have a question? So it looks like maybe since we got the questions in advance, I think that. Oh yes, Brittany.
Okay. All right. So I'm new to the video side of things. I love runway. I love the excitement and people in the crowds. My biggest question, and maybe the biggest challenge we've seen, or maybe personally I've seen and scared the hell out of myself about, but is how to get that video once you've created these 2 videos that we saw at the beginning of Zula. Now, how did you get that out there to where you are visible and to the audience that you want to be wearing your clothing, and just the visibility of it? And if was it what you were hoping for? And if not, how would you change things on getting that video out?
Yes, it's a very good question. It is a #1 question, because no matter how great your product is, if you and your friends, a few of your friends only see it, how are you going to get it out there? Of course, I posted it on the Facebook, Instagram, and friends shared it. And I would love to have a bigger audience and bigger exposure. How to do that? I'm still thinking about it, because even if you pay for your advertisement, it's not necessarily going to work like the way you would want it. I am thinking that what would be great if we could all put our efforts, like our brainstorm that, because if we're all doing that product, we're all gonna need that. But for now, it was the very first experience of creating the teaser for the collection, fully conceptual, from the concept to the actual clothes. It was our first experience, so we didn't put much thought into that. But next one, yes, we will be really thinking on how to do that. And
That's beautiful.
Share if you know how to.
We're trying to figure that out too. But yes, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
We'd love to share it.
Thank you so much.
All right. And I think we've got time for one last question. There was one typed in from Jamie Doty for the designers. How long would you say the process is from idea to completed collection? Is there a standard time frame, or does it vary with each collection? And also, have you started one idea and it just totally ended up morphing into something else?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's also the type of product that you do. I mean, when you are in corporate setting with a giant retailer, you're on schedule and you design a year ahead, and you have 1 year, like probably 3 months to complete your design work. Then 3 or 4 more months, then technical design and factors complete their end, and then you have all the rest of a month for all these units to be made and shipped and arrive here and be distributed in the store. So you have a whole 12 months between your concept and actually seeing a final product in the store. When I worked for smaller companies, it would be the window of maybe 2, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. That's why we have 2 fashion weeks. Now we probably will have more. So you have that half a year between concept and presenting your product. And when you're doing small capsules, it could be anything. It could be a few weeks, 1 month, 2 months. So that's my experience with timelines.
Well, I would compare designing, if you're not tied up with the corporate world, if you're not working for the giant, if you are working for yourself. Designing, I would compare it with flying. Just imagine you're flying in the sky. There are no limits. You can do that in 3 months if you are of the wish to do so. You can do it. You can spend more time. You can put it aside and let it brew. Last year, when I have the very busy business, bridal, which takes up most of my times. So last year, when pandemic hit and everything just stopped, instead of being panicked and terrified, I saw the opportunity to finish the collection that I was thinking about for the longest time, as I said. And I made this few months when everything was dead, the happiest time of my life. And I finished that quite fast. But how much time it takes, it really depends on the sources. How many seamstresses do you have, or do you do it by yourself? How difficult that is? Is it a ready-to-wear? Is it a couture? If it's like, and I'm using the word couture fully knowing that I shouldn't, but let's just, for the better choice of word, let's call it couture, meaning one dress could take maybe 80 hours to make because it's handmade, hand embroidered, or detailed to the point when it's basically endless. How many people are helping you? So the question is missing the essential ground to answer. The answer, though, it doesn't matter. It really is up to you. If you are enjoying designing, if you're a creative mind, you are happiest when you're doing that. And that means it's all about the journey, the process, not the result. It really is what makes you happy.
All right, that's great. We've got one more thing in the chat. It is from Mira. It says that she worked as a fashion designer for 7 years in Jakarta, Indonesia. She's been in St. Augustine for 3 months, and she is looking for fashion industry jobs in St. Augustine. So if anyone has anything, her email is here in the chat, and I have written that down too. So if anyone would like to contact her after the program. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to Alissa for coming on very last minute to help us out today. And to Zula for being very willing to help us once again also. And then to Adrienne, she's always the great moderator. And so thank you everyone too for coming to listen today. And you can follow Alissa at Alisse Day Collection. You can follow Zula at ZulaStudio, and you can follow Adrienne at First Coast Fashion, and they're all on Facebook and Instagram. And so our next event for Fashion Group is in partnership with FGI of South Florida, but this is exclusively for FGI members. It's a virtual tour of the World of Anna's Sweet exhibition, and we'll be having that next month. And as I said before, you can find out more and you can join FGI at fgi.org. And then we're also working with Tammy, who's here tonight. She's our district director of FGI, Tammy Apostle, and she's creative director of TA Couture, a fashion house serving clients mainly in Miami and Palm Beach. And she also teaches fashion and accessory design at Miami International University. So she's a wealth of information as well. So please follow FGI of North Florida and FGI of South Florida on Facebook and Instagram for details of our upcoming programs. The one in May is Designed in Florida, and that will feature Zula and also designers from Central and South Florida. So that'll be another great program. And also please follow St. Augustine Fashion Week. And so I want to close with you, Brittany. Brittany Alfonso is the St. Augustine Fashion Week founder. And please let us know some information about tomorrow's event.
Okay, so as you know, this year has been completely virtual. It's been a challenge, but it has been a welcome challenge. We're very excited to share with everyone what we have. Tomorrow is going to be around, I think, 6 or 7. We're going to start releasing our video. It's a creative film. We've got The Way We Were Vintage, Tie-Dye RX, Corvega, and Victoria Henley. We've all collectively, and Fulani, gosh, don't forget her, collectively put together this video in many areas of St. Augustine, from the lighthouse to the St. Augustine, the Lightner Museum, to fields around St. Augustine. So it's going to be fun to see it all come together and hear a few words, put a face to the brand. Designers are going to introduce themselves, and that's something we get to see them walk the runway, but this time we get to actually see them speak about their brand. So it's going to be interesting, and we've really enjoyed it this year. So it's going to be fun to share with everybody. But you're going to find it on stafashionweek.com as well as we're going to plug it in at IGTV, Instagram TV.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap then. And thanks again, Brittany and Carrie, for getting us involved with St. Augustine Fashion Week. It's a great partnership that we would love to continue. So thanks everyone for coming. Yes, Alissa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, if you, for the students especially, if you have any further questions, either about Parsons or anything, or, you know, your further education path, and you would like to ask, I'm always reachable at Instagram. So just DM me and I'll be happy to answer anything I know.
Yep, that's great.
Okay. And I just had a suggestion from Tammy. I will just go ahead and email you all the Instagram handles of all the speakers and the moderators so that you can reach out to them if you'd like to after tonight. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great weekend. And we hope to see you tomorrow night at the St. Augustine Fashion Week event. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Nice.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.